Greetings, loves. It is I, Tactical Girlfriend. Welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody's doing well. Today I have a stage review of all 8 stages at the High Desert Brutality 2023 competition by InRange TV. These were a series of physical range challenges in pretty hot desert weather, something I'm pretty much not at all accustomed to. And it was a high of 95 degrees, so it was indeed brutal. I also was running a rifle and optic setup that I've only shot once before, so I was ready to learn a lot of good things, get some good lessons under my belt, and I also was pushing myself to my limits here. I only had a couple hours of sleep, had some car trouble on the way to the competition, and just barely made it. So this was a pretty challenging day, but I'm overall pretty happy with the lessons I had to bring back. I sure learned a lot, and I'm going to go over that for you here. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first stage is called Silent Scope. The shooter starts on the second floor of a tower, prone, rifle loaded, on safe, aiming downrange. At the buzzer, the shooter then flips one of 5 cards and engages the target listed on the card. The shooter then flips the remaining 4 cards and repeats. Targets from left to right are 390 yards, 290 yards, 328 yards, 205 yards, and 250 yards. Also, any static target left unhit is an additional 60 seconds on the clock. I also do apologize, the audio was cut out for this stage, so you'll just have to use your imagination for the sounds, or I could awkwardly add in my own sounds. Pow! Pew! Bang! Ka-chow! Stage was all shooting from a static position, and that was good to get dialed in first thing in the beginning of the day. Most of these targets were fairly easy for me to engage. There was one that gave me trouble where I was just dancing around it for a very long time and wasted a lot of ammo. Can't really explain that, honestly. I think that sometimes you just start missing and you get frustrated and you miss even harder. Also, probably the biggest challenge of this entire stage was just flipping the index cards over. Having gloves on during that was not very easy, and I ended up making a huge mess, and it really interfered with the entire flow of the course that I ran. Once you get the prone portion completed here with the first 5 targets, you then transition to the second support beam of the tower, and you repeat the same process over again. I also parred out in this stage. It was a difficult one for me, but it was a good one to start out, make sure I get dialed in, and have myself set up for better success moving on to the other stages throughout the day. This next stage is called Operation Wolf. The shooter actually starts out ahead from where you can see here, where I shoot at 300 and 100 yard targets, 2 targets at each of those distances, 1 hit each. You then run up the range, through the van, safely reload, and then engage those static steel targets with 2 hits each firing through the van. You then neutralize the plate rack from the hood of the van. Any required hits not acquired is an additional 30 seconds on the clock. On this stage, it was when I started to notice that I was having some issues with feeding, mainly just seating the mag in the right position in the mag well. I spoke to Russell from KE Arms about this. He said that I should try a non-ambi mag catch, but there are some known issues about that, so I'm going to give that a shot. This was an issue that did plague me for the rest of the day, as you'll see in further footage, but overall, the rifle did run very well otherwise, and I got it dialed in, and it was an absolute tack driver. Once the plates are all down, the shooter then runs across the road after ditching the rifle in the van and works their way up to the trench. Caveat here, I was supposed to have my pistol in condition 3. I ended up completely forgetting that part, having to reach into my pocket to grab another magazine and load up as I ran into the trench. From there, the shooter then simply engages all the steel targets in the trench, neutralizing each one with 2 shots. This one is called Metal Gear Solid. The shooter starts standing next to a paper target with their knife in hand, pistol holstered condition 3, rifle staged in condition 3 in the bay. At the buzzer, you then stab the target, you leave your knife behind, you then acquire your rifle and spin the spinner and get 2 hits on each static steel target. Any required hits that were not acquired on this stage would be an additional 30 seconds on the clock for each. This was the second time I've ever shot a spinner. The first time was pretty rough at Desert Brutality 2022. This time I had a lot better luck. It still definitely took me some time, but I eventually made it over. Once the spinner goes over, you then run down this hill, you grab a Mark 23 pistol with 1 round in it, and you get 1 shot at this popper. This is the first time I've ever shot a Mark 23. I got a little bit over the target there, just barely missed. Unfortunately, didn't get that bonus. Once you take your shot, you then crawl under the table and you enter the shoot house. You then draw your pistol, you maintain the 180 the entire time. You engage the targets presented through the green shooting portals. This first part involves a spinner with holes in it. This was very challenging. I wasted a lot of ammo getting the spinner over. In addition, there is a red no-shoot behind it. You acquire 1 penalty for this no-shoot. Fortunately, I didn't hit that at least. Then move up to the second position, which is simply 3 poppers that you have to nail in front of you. After this, you then run through the course. I got a little turnaround getting to the 3rd position here. At the 3rd position, there are some poppers with no-shoots around them. You can acquire 1 penalty on each no-shoot. Fortunately, I got all the poppers and none of the no-shoots. Finally, the 4th and last position, there are 4 white knockdown targets with black hardcover targets in front of them. Challenge here is that you gotta get those rounds through those fairly small holes as they progressively get a lot smaller. Fortunately, I ran this one pretty well. This next stage was called Starship Troopers. This is a very fun one. You start with your rifle, condition 3 on the table. You then start out with a cannon in hand, and you shoot a tennis ball into this ring. The unfortunate thing here is that 2 tennis balls were inadvertently loaded into this cannon, which definitely made things not go so well for me. Unfortunately, both of them did glance on the outside of that ring. I then switched over to my rifle, engaged a target at 100 yards, 5 shots on that steel. Once neutralized, you then run forward through the course. You shoot 5 rounds into the bugs coming up here. This is pretty fun because it was easy enough to shoot these larger targets just from the hip. You then move to this wood barricade, which I forgot to actually stay at, and had to go back and actually brace myself on it for my next few shots here, and it was not very stable, as you can see. You then have one mini steel target and one larger steel target at 100 yards. You need to hit the mini steel target with 1 hit and the larger one with 5. Once past here, I then need to run up to the wobbly bridge and throw a grenade into the bug. Unfortunately, I forgot to grab a grenade for this part. Started talking to the RO and wasted a little time doing that, but he said that I could just use a mag, so I throw a mag in after shooting 5 shots into it. I then engage the steel targets 100 yards away, 5 shots each on those while on the wobbly bridge. On this stage, if you get the can cannon to shoot the ball into the loop there, you get an minus 30 seconds on the clock. Not neutralizing any bugs is an additional 30 seconds on the clock, and not getting a grenade through the hole is also an additional 30 seconds on the clock. This next stage is called Red Dawn. Shooter begins with a Condition 3 rifle in the bed of the truck, pistol loaded and holstered, starting behind the truck. At the buzzer, you then draw your pistol, engage the popper targets, drop the magazine, and then engage the static steel. Once you do that, you then reholster the empty pistol, run and get into the back of the truck. You then acquire your rifle and chamber it, having it pointed safely downrange. The truck will then drive up the range, and then you may engage static steel with a rifle for a bonus acquired for each hit. This part was pretty hard because, for one, I had my scope caps on, and I missed the first target, and then the second target was pretty difficult to see due to the dust being kicked up from the truck. I did get 1 bonus hit at least. Once you're past, you then clear your rifle, exit the truck, then move on to the first wooden barricade position, and then get 1 hit on each of the 3 steel targets at 500 yards. As far as bonuses and penalties on the stage go, if you miss a clearing target with your pistol, that's an additional 30 seconds. Any hits shooting those targets while moving in the truck with your rifle is 10 seconds off the clock. And any static steel target left unhit is an additional 30 seconds on the clock. Once you're done, you then move on to the second wood barricade, and again you engage 3 targets, this time at 400 yards, 1 hit on each. Finally, you move on to the last wooden barricade and engage 3 steel targets, 1 hit on each, at 300 yards. This next stage is everybody's favorite, the Casada drill. This one is called Casada at the Gates. Shooter starts with the rifle empty on the spool. You start with your magazine in hand and you run to that position. Over here you'll see again I do have another feed issue where my magazine gets over-inserted into the AR. Gotta clear that malfunction. I work through it. Then I run down, lay down next to this kettlebell here, it's 55 pounds, and engage that steel target at 250 yards, 2 shots on it. Then pick up the kettlebell, throw it, pick up your rifle, run up next to the kettlebell within arm's reach, go prone, do the same thing again, engage that steel target 250 yards away. For each of these lines, when you throw your kettlebell over it and then land 2 consecutive shots on steel, you get a negative 10 seconds taken away from your time on the clock. I did par out on this stage. The kettlebell weighs nearly half of my body weight, so it was not that easy to throw. I did not get as much distance as I probably would have liked, and it was very grueling in that heat. So, all things considered, I still feel pretty good about the way I did. This next stage was a very cool stage put on by the folks at Lead Cloud. This one was called Metro 2023. Shooter starts in a tent, chained to a chair. Rifle ammunition and the pistol ammunition are both held by the Lead Cloud folks. At the buzzer, shooter escapes the chains. I did have some difficulty getting that carabiner out of the chain link, but eventually I did escape. Once you escape, you then retrieve your pistol magazines and load up and engage these poppers as well as this spinner. This is a part where I ran into what was probably the most significant failures of the day. I think at the Casada at the gate stage, my Glock got filled with that moon dust, and it just simply was not enjoying the magazines I was putting into it. Some of my magazines wouldn't even stay in the mag well. Others would simply refuse to feed entirely. I had to keep cycling magazines in and out as these failures continued, and it was pretty frustrating. But I eventually did clear this, thankfully. Bonuses and penalties on this stage include failure to spin the spinner, which is an additional 60 seconds on the clock. Any poppers left unhit are each an additional 60 seconds on the clock, and static steel targets left unhit are also 60 seconds on the clock. Once the poppers and the spinner is cleared, you then grab your rifle, and then you drag the dummy over to the first barricade. From there, you then engage targets at 3, 4, and 500 yards with 1 hit on each. After that, you repeat the process again, unload the rifle, show clear, grab the dummy, then run to the second barricade and again engage those targets at 3, 4, and 500 yards with 1 hit on each. At this point I did par out, but there is more to this stage. You then unload and show clear, grab the dummy, and move on to a van where you drag that dummy into the van and again engage those targets at 3, 4, and 500 yards, 1 hit on each. And last but not least, the final stage here is Hamburger Hill. Shooter begins standing behind a crashed aircraft, both weapons in condition 3. Once the buzzer goes off, you then drag the dummy to the first fighting hole, load your rifle, and acquire 2 hits on all 3 targets. Once that's clear, you then drag the dummy to the second fighting hole. As far as bonuses and penalty on this stage goes, Any required hits not acquired is an additional 30 seconds, and not dragging the dummy to each position is an additional 30 seconds per instance. On this position, you also get 2 hits on the next 3 targets. After that, you leave the dummy in place and you run up the hill, avoiding those red circles, which stand for landmines. Don't want to hit those. Then get to the final position here, and then you engage all 6 rifle targets, 2 hits on each. From here, there's also a long-range target that you're supposed to hit at 250 yards, I believe. It was a little hard for me to see, and I was not totally oriented with this course beforehand, so I had to do a little searching around for it. Then it was a little frustrating, and I think I lost my cool here. Definitely something that is pretty easy to do when on the clock. It's good to just slow down and focus and take your time when you need to. Finally, I hit that one last long-range target, then ground your rifle, you grab your pistol, and you engage all pistol targets with 1 hit on each. Over here I did waste 1 additional round that I didn't need to on those pistol targets. I did not realize I only had to shoot those once. And I finished the stage with the last round in that mag. Overall, I had an absolute blast at High Desert Brutality. There were a lot of lessons to be taken home, and that's exactly why I went here. I was running a bunch of things I normally can't on the flat range, testing a lot of gear that I am not really familiar with, and putting myself in very different conditions than I'm used to. So there was a lot to take home from this. I'm still reviewing a lot of this in my head, and it's given me a lot to think about, which is great, and I definitely look forward to going to more of these. In-Range TV really puts on a really good event that is extremely welcoming to the community. Very friendly folks that really have some very creative course designs, and they keep it very fun. And that was my biggest takeaways, honestly. I just had an absolute blast, and I can't wait to do this again. I want to thank you all for tuning in, checking out my stage breakdown. This is Tactical Girlfriend. Also thanking everybody supporting my channel on Patreon. Could not do any of this without y'all. If you want to go help out, you can always go to patreon.com/tacticalgf. The biggest contributors are named at the end of the video.